Hello and welcome. My name is Shilpa Vijaykrishnan, and I head the Education and Outreach Department at the Museum of Art and Photography, MAP, Bangalore. It is my pleasure to introduce our beginner level masterclass in food photography today. Food is really at the heart of who we are and what we do. It is both, the life source and expression of desire. One can scarcely probably think of anything, any other substance that human beings have attached more meaning to than food. And while food has played an integral role in our myth, ritual, and art for a long, long time, its representation has never been as prolific or as democratic as it is today. Today, phone cameras and social media has put food front and center in all of our lives so that we capture delicious moments and share them with friends, family, and the world, even so, or even more so in recent times post the pandemic. From personal experience, I know it is possible for great food photographs to actually make you drool and give rise to those, immediate cravings. And helping us hone the craft of getting those right today is Rakhee Yadav, a Netherlands-based food photographer and visual storyteller. Rakhee Yadav brings the best of two worlds, using the magical Dutch light to photograph Indian dishes, showcasing their very wide variety. She may be drawn to the aesthetics of minimalism and the dark and the moody, but when she is not cooking and photographing Indian food, she is rustling up cupcakes. Her Instagram handle can be found in the chat box along with her bio if you'd like to see more of her work. From all of us at MAP, thank you so much, Rakhee, for giving us your time today. I would also like to thank Anand from Signable for doing the Indian Sign Language interpretation for this session. A quick reminder to everyone to address their questions for Rakhee using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to do this throughout the session, but Rakhee will also invite questions at specific points through the masterclass. Without further ado, Rakhee, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Shilpa. Hi, Shruti. Hi, Map. Thank you very much for doing this session with me. I'm quite honored to have been asked, very humbled. Food photography, as you say, is the heart of everything we do. It's what brings us together, really. And especially in communities like India, where family is so important. I think it's the one thing that binds us and is without borders, let's say. So I'm just going to go right into it. This is a beginner's level, so I will not be going into too much detail. It's just the basics so that you have some sort of platform to jump from and then take it from there. So I'm going to start sharing my screen now. All right, so food photography for me started some 8-10 years ago. I had just moved from the US and I was going from a full-time job to really being in a new country, new food, new everything. And as you can imagine, I was isolated. I was, didn't have much to do. So it was only natural for me as a graphic designer, that was my background, to start experimenting with photography at home. Now, I had been a photographer for a very long time. I've been a photographer for some 20-25 years, but food was really a new subject for me. I call myself a food photographer now, but I used to not be. I was a people's photographer. So I was used to telling stories. And that whole thing that they say that a picture tells 1,000 words may sound cliched, but it is very true. A picture can tell a story, and why not a food photograph? And I think that is what I at least aim to do with my pictures. I am in Europe.
Just very quickly, we're not able to share your screen. I mean, we're not able to see your screen. So if you could just share it again.
Oh, okay. And that's odd. All right. Can we see it now? Shilpa, can we see it now?
It seems to be loading. Hopefully it should
Okay,
come.
let me try something else. Hold on. Now?
Yeah, this is.
Okay. All right. So sorry about that, a bit of a technical thing. So I was just saying that I have been a photographer for a very long time. And so I think being in a new country, it made me not want to go outside because, you know, everything is new. So I started experimenting at home. And it was a big learning curve because I thought I was a photographer, so it would be easy, but food photography is far from easy, as some of you may know. But I think the key is to practice. And I cannot say this often enough: practice, practice, practice. So as you will see here on the left-hand side of the screen, those were my images when I began. They're not in focus, the angles are not quite right, the colors are off. And the images on the right is where I am right now. So it's obviously, as an Indian, it's very important for me. Color is very important for me. And I kind of gravitate towards oranges, reds, and the very deep pinks. So I think it's also important for you to kind of figure out what moves you in a photograph, because a lot of people also do monochromatic images. That's also fine, but it's something that you need to figure out. Color is what is me. India is color. India is all about color. So it's important for me. But what is important for you? That is something that you need to think about. And the more you practice, the more you experiment, that will become clear to you as you go on. So one of the why do we photograph food? I think Shilpa said that a little bit. I think we want to share because of social media and because we are sharing just about everything in our lives through images with the advent of Instagram. We also want to share this aspect of our lives and not just maybe the lifestyle aspect. And to take your photograph to the next level, I think it's important to know some basics of photography. If that's what interests you, if you're just doing it for fun, that is something else. But if you feel like, I want my pictures to look better, then maybe you need to figure out what are the basics. And it is different from street or people photography. So we're going to handle it differently as well. So this is a question that I get asked very often. Do I need to go out and buy a lot of equipment? And I always say, no, absolutely not. It's not the equipment that matters, it is your eye. Again, very cliched, but very true. When I began with food photography, I had a camera because, I was a photographer, but I disliked the idea of having to pick up a big camera and, take pictures with it. So I tried it with my phone. So for a long time, I was taking pictures only with my phone camera, actually. And back then, phone cameras were not as powerful as they are today. So I would strongly advise to just use your phone camera. If you already have a camera or you have some money to invest, then even then, I would say get an entry-level DSLR and just a 50mm. Till I think about 2 years ago, I just had a DSLR and just one lens. And you can do a lot with the 50 mm. It's not an expensive lens. It's fairly affordable. I think it's not more than 100 euros, which is what I think about 8,000 rupees. And it's a great lens, and it's very, very versatile. So you don't need to break the bank. You still can do great stuff with just an entry level, but with a phone camera as well. So now we're going to do some basics in food photography, some of the basic aspects. And we're going to start with light. It's the most important aspect of shooting, light. You need to understand it, and you need to master it. And when you begin, again, with the equipment, going back to the equipment, please don't buy any expensive lights. You need to go back to the basics first. Artificial light is just that, it's artificial. And to be able to master artificial, you first need to begin with natural light. And natural light is the most beautiful thing, because you can experiment with it at different times of the day. It may be limiting because you have certain amount of hours of light in a day, but limitations also will make you experiment more, find solutions. So I greatly advise to use only natural light when you begin. You have several different types of lights. Actually, before I start this section, I would like you to go around your house and look for the perfect spot where you can take your pictures. For me, it was in my living room. Literally, it's a small strip. I have no studio. It was a small strip that I found, which is where I set up every time. Now, I was limited because the space was so small, which is why earlier on in my pictures, you will find that I mostly do shots like the one in the middle here. That's a top-down, popularly called a flat lay. So go around your house and look for a spot where there is a door or there is a window where you have sufficient amount of light coming in. So what is side light? Side light is exactly what it says. It's light source coming from one side. So you will see in the picture on the left-hand side, the light is coming from the right-hand side. And you can tell that from the shadows that are falling on the left. So one side of your photograph is going to be darker. That is what we want. That is the mood it creates. If you want to minimize the light coming from the left, you can put what we call in photography a bounce card, but you don't have to again go out and buy one. You can use styrofoam, you can use a white sheet, you can use, I don't know, you can have cardboard that you paint white. So you can be inventive like that, and you don't have to, again, spend a lot of money. I'll tell you that I don't really use any equipment in my photography. So I just have my camera. I have my light source, which is actually a door on the right-hand side. I don't use bounce cards. I don't use blackout cards. And the reason why I don't do that is because I want to be able to find solutions without having a lot of paraphernalia with me. But that is me. You don't have to be like that. You can make it easier for yourself. And you can use those simple props, let's say, to be able to achieve the effect that you want. Backlight. Backlight is when the subject is lit from the back. So simple enough, as you can tell from the image in the middle, that the shadow is falling up front, which means light, you're facing the light. Your camera is basically facing the light. when you're taking a photograph. This is a flat lay. So which means it's completely 90 degrees. Your camera is 90 degrees from parallel to the ground. This is very versatile, this kind of light, and it's usually, I use backlight for my images. Like I said, the space where I shoot is very small, so I don't have much room to put a table and be able to do other stuff. So there is such a thing as harsh light, which is the cornermost on the right. This you can achieve when you have full-on sun coming in. And this is, of course, this is a combination of harsh light with backlight. As you can see again, the shadows are falling up front. And here the shadows are very dark. So if you compare this image to the other two images, you'll see that the shadows are very, very stark. They have hard lines. They're not soft at all. So this you can also achieve with a strong bulb if you have. I have never tried it, but it is achievable with a bulb. And you can throw shadows of a plant like it is on the top corner or top part of the image. This has become very popular in the last 1 or 2 years, this style of photography. Because it's very pop art. It's like I said, it's very graphic, because there's so many shapes that you create just with the shadow. So these are the kind of lights that you can play with in the beginning. And it's important, especially if you're using your phone, that you use natural light. I'm going to say it 100 times if I have to. Please use natural light. I think we can go to some questions now. If anybody has any questions at this point about light, please do so. I'm not sure if I'm in the Q&A, right? Yeah. Okay, so Bankuri, I think, is asking how long do you take to set up before you click? Interesting question, very nice question. This changed for me over time. I usually would just cook, style, and take the photograph. But that is because I was already shooting for such a long time, for so many years, that it almost became like I could do it blindfolded. So it was easy for me. But as I started progressing, I would recommend actually spending some time setting up. So especially with a product like ice cream, let's say, or if you're using ice cubes, if you're using real ice cubes instead of fake ones, you cannot just set up 2 minutes before you're shooting, because then you have no time to actually move your setup around, because the ice cream would melt and the ice cubes will melt, and that's no fun. I've tried it, it's no fun, because then you have to wait an entire day, or you have to wait a few hours for the ice cream to set back in. So I think there is something to be said about actually, like in the middle image, I could have put the plates in already, and then put the finished product in afterwards, which means that it is faster. It goes much faster to then actually take the shot. But having said all that, except for maybe the ice cream and the ice cube business, it's important for you to also move your setup around when you're shooting. So it's a difficult question to answer, because it's sometimes one way, sometimes another. Sometimes it can just take me 15 minutes. Sometimes it can take a few hours, just because I'm not satisfied with the shot. And because you're shooting digitally, please take as many photographs as you can. Because then later on in post, you can compare and you can see, hey, this setup worked, that didn't. I'm not going to do that again, or I'll do it differently. So it's important for you to take many pictures, and please don't delete any pictures. You may think at that moment, not nice, but it's great for comparison. So I hope I've answered your question. Any specific setting on the phone? Like with the camera, please shoot on Pro setting. I know most smartphones have that. If you don't, then you can, the one thing that really helps me with the phone is that you can actually set the exposure on your phone. So what you do is, at least on my Samsung, I can just keep clicking or keep my finger pressed on the screen, and then it'll bring up a dial. So there I can make either the photograph lighter or I can make it darker. So you have some control. But also on the, whether it's your camera or whether it's your phone, if you shoot on the Pro setting, on the manual setting, so don't let your camera do everything. You should, please don't shoot on the automatic mode, because you're not going to learn anything. If you keep it completely manual, you will make a lot of mistakes. And I can tell you, 90% of your photographs will be rubbish, but that's a good thing. I know it sounds bad, but you need to have bad photographs before you can have good ones. So that is important for you to do. So that is, if you have that setting on your phone, because I think most phones do, please use the Pro setting. How do you achieve low-key images? I don't have an iPhone, so I'm not sure, but I can tell you that anyone who's doing what you're talking about, either they're using a very dark background, or in post-production, they are darkening the background, which is very simple to do, actually. You can download Lightroom on your phones. It's a free app. I think it has some settings that are not open if you're not a member or you're not paying for it, but a lot of it is free, and you can easily do that on the Lightroom app. So what you do is you block the area that you want lit, and the rest you turn dark. So it's it's post-production work, basically. Does it make sense to take the photos outdoors? I would recommend not to do that, because what happens is that you the white balance is going to be all off. What is white balance? White balance is basically the temperature of your photograph. And you cannot control that. You cannot control the light. You cannot control the temperature. No, not in the beginning. Not unless you've learned how to use light. I still don't dare take photographs outside. However, for harsh light, you could. Because again, it's really harsh, and you can get shadows and you can get shapes like in the third image. So for harsh light, it's okay. But if you want to create the image on the left or in the middle, that's a no-no, because the image will have no depth. It will be flat and it'll be gray. The bright light was just light coming in from a window. So this is just placed on the floor. And behind me, or in front of me, sorry, the camera is basically facing the light, and it's taken from the top, and it's just very, very strong sunlight, which, you know, in India you have tons of. In Holland, it's difficult because most days are cloudy. So this is a difficult photograph to achieve with natural light. But when the sun comes out, you'll see me running to get my stuff together to get an image like this. because I'm very particular. I don't like to use artificial light. I like only natural light. I would not take a photograph on an iPad. Bad idea. The camera is not so good. So if you have a phone, please do it on your phone. How much post-production? Post-production, a lot of people do a lot of post-production work. And I used to, if I'm honest, I used to do a lot of post-production myself. But lately, I prefer to do it all in the camera. So I have enough understanding of my subject, of the food, of whatever, the light situation. I know it so well that now I do a lot of it in the camera. So my post-production work on a particular photograph would probably take just, I don't know, 5 minutes. That's not a lot. Good point, Devyani. Please do not use flash. I forgot to mention this. Please do not use flash for food photography. Not a good idea. Unless you are using artificial light and it's, it's a strobe light. That's different. But no to flash. No to flash. No flash, please. Reynold, I cannot tell you major settings of the camera. There is no such thing. It depends on your in what the situation is. Is it a dark day? Is it a light day? What is the quality of the light coming in? So that is an impossible question to answer. It depends. Indian light, too much light can be controlled. You can diffuse it. You can diffuse it with just a curtain. So no problem. And in terms of whether it's yellow or blue, that's again the temperature of the light. You can change that in post-production. That's your white balance. Very easy to change in post-production. It's not necessary to use human hands in the frame. I think this we will deal with a little later. It's not so much light related. Okay, I'm going to move on. Priya, we're going to discuss the angles a little later. I think the next one we're going to do is we're going to go to backdrops. So if everyone is clear on lights, this is it's hard to do it in such a short amount of time because this is not easy to do, but light is if I can say it again, light is the most important aspect of your photography. Okay. Backdrops, another important aspect after your lighting. Keep your backdrop neutral because food is your subject. So food is the hero. It's the star of your image. So imagine this, if a backdrop is cluttered, it's messy, it's all sorts of different colors, your food, which is the star of your image, is going to get lost. Especially in images that I do. My images are very bright, a lot of color. Now, if I put, let's say with the image on the right, it's basically warm colors with a cool background. But if I had put, I don't know, a patterned cloth at the back, it would take away the focus from the citrus fruit to actually the cloth in the background because it simply is messy. So background is very important. I know a lot of bloggers and food photographers spend tons of money on backdrops. Again, not needed. You can create your own backdrops, and actually I use only 2, at the most 3 backdrops. You could say that's boring, but to me that is consistency. And I repeatedly get told that if someone sees my photograph, they immediately know it's me, because there is a consistent element in the photograph. As you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, the photograph on the right it has a black background. So the honey that is being poured, at least for me, there's nothing else on the photograph but the honey. And that is basically what I want to show as well. And that is the storytelling aspect as well, right? You need to be able to figure out what is it that you want to depict. And in this image, it was, for me, the stickiness of the honey, the sweetness of the honey, and I love honey. So when I love a subject as much as I do, I want to be able to show it in all its glory. However, on the left-hand side of the same image, I did this as a rough Photoshop job, but you see when the background is so busy, my eye does not know where to look, which is the opposite of what my intention is. So it's important to know that the food is your star, and you don't want your star to get lost among other stars, if I can put it in a very silly way. So what Devyani also asked, what is the best material for a backdrop? It can be a canvas that you have painted. It can be hardboard that you have painted. It can be a black styrofoam. It can be anything you want. I actually use wallpaper because I don't want to go out and spend money on backdrops. I use anything and everything that I have in the house. My house was getting, actually this backdrop is from my daughter's room. It was getting wallpapered, so there was some leftover, so I started using it. Simple. I implore you all not to go out and buy stuff. If there's one message that I can give in this masterclass, is don't go out and buy stuff, but use whatever is at hand, whatever you have in the house. Just go scavenge hunting in your house. You will not imagine the kind of things you will find. So no, food, I would not take food photographs with the green screen, because what are you trying to achieve with that? Are you going to superimpose another background? That doesn't make sense. So backdrops indeed are important. Keep them clean, keep them, and you can also do the whole color wheel thing. So if you see that I have unintentionally used the color wheel in the two photographs on the right. So it's a warm thing with cool, and again, there's warm food with cool. So I don't necessarily like to use technical aspects in my photography, because I shoot more from an instinct based feeling. Then I'm not technical at all. If you ask me technical stuff, I will not be able to tell you, because I shoot from the fact that I love doing it. And I know a lot of people get afraid that they are not technical, and therefore they will not be able to do it. Please, not important. All those S curves and pyramids, and forget them. Forget them. Please forget them. Just experiment. Just put the food in front of you and just shoot. Shoot, shoot, shoot. All those silly terms that you see on Instagram, I'm really sick of them. No need. So I'm going to see the questions. Yeah, the hands are mine. And I shoot them because I'm shooting on the floor. People laugh at me. So I would position myself and use it on a timer. I don't have anyone to help me. So Elizabeth, I do that by myself. My camera is actually also, I used to have a remote once upon a time, but I don't know what happened to that. It doesn't work anymore. But I know a lot of the new cameras are also Wi-Fi. You can control them with your phone. So great way. You can just shoot from your phone. So I wish I had that actually, because I really do miss that. Because what I need to do is I put it on the timer and then I run to position myself basically. But yeah, it works. Do I leave space for captions? No. Why? I'm not, unless it's a shoot for a magazine and it's for an ad. Why would I do that? No, I don't leave space for any captions or anything. But again, negative space is important. So if you see the image in the middle with the burgers, there is a lot of negative space because there's room. It is a fairly busy shot. I would not call this a minimal shot. So it is important in the frame that you give some space for breathing, because otherwise it's too much. If it's too much, the viewer will walk away, whether it's online by swiping or if it's hung up somewhere. The viewer is going to walk away because it's too much to take in. So negative space is important. And that also, again, comes with practice. Because I remember that in the beginning, I knew the concept of negative space, of course, but I was not able to translate it into my work. So that has come with time. I do prefer, Tanushri, I do prefer darker backdrops because I like moody images. That's personally for me. And that's a very personal thing. But do I, which colors? I think green, like darker greens would work very well for food photography. Also, earth colors. So again, warm colors might do very well. I have not tried them myself, but I do see them on other people's images, and they do appeal to me. So I think those kind of colors can work well. But it again depends on the kind of food you're shooting. So if I put, I don't know, a green soup on a green background, that might not work so well, depending on what shades of green they are. So that is something to find out. But yeah, for dark photography, it's important to use dark backdrops. If I was more tuned to doing light photography, then I would choose lighter backgrounds, because I have tried doing dark, like lighter photographs with dark backdrops, and it just simply does not work. It simply does not work. Yeah, Susan, it is a good idea to contrast background colors with the food. So again, I would suggest you go back to the color wheel. If you have, there are plenty of color wheels available online, so you can check. I personally don't do that. I just, because I only work with 2-3 backdrops, I simply put them on my darker backgrounds. Now, darker backgrounds lend themselves very well to bright foods. And since I am someone who uses a lot of color in my photography, it works well with me. But the color wheel can help. I find it tedious to do because, again, I do it more out of instinct rather than anything technical. But contrasting colors do work very well. As you can see in the image on the right-hand side and in the middle, that the warmer colors do come out when they're on a cooler background. That does work. So blue complements reds and oranges, actually. And the same thing is with the middle photograph. The colors of the background are slightly grayer, but they are still on the bluer side. And they are complementing. And the bowl on the front, it has got a green element in it. So the cooler colors are complementing the warmer colors. I don't use any watermark on my photographs for Instagram. I know some people do it. I'm not a big fan, just because I feel it looks too commercial, and I'm not. I have to think about that one, because I from a visual aspect, I don't like looking at it. I certainly don't like looking at pictures of people who do it. So I don't know what your objective is with doing that. Are you scared that people are going to steal your images? They could anyway. Unless you're going to put it right in the middle, they could crop it out. So think about what your objective is, and if people want to steal, they're going to steal it anyway. I would simply not do glossy backdrops, Devyani. Not a good idea. So also with plates and stuff, that is why it's difficult to shoot like a wine bottle, because they're so reflective. You'll have all sorts of reflection on them, so it's difficult. So like light on bottles usually is done in studios with artificial light, because otherwise you're going to have all sorts of reflections on it. And also with plates, I just bought these new plates and all sorts of reflections. So I would just not go for glossy backdrops. Again, it detracts from your food. Angles we're just going to do after this. Any tips for conceptualizing story behind the shot? That is something that will come through if you love your subject. I say this a lot on Instagram as well, that if you are shooting something that you love, it will show through. So Trina, if you love Indian food, but you are shooting cakes just because cakes are popular, it's going to be half-hearted. You are simply, this generation is a smart generation. It just figures stuff out. So they'll know that you don't love, because it's going to show through in your photograph. And I know for a fact that that also happens with me. If I'm shooting something like, let's say, I don't know, Mexican food, which I love eating, but I don't really have much else with it. So it just simply shows in my photograph. It doesn't look good. I may try 100 million times, but it just doesn't look good. On the other hand, Indian food, that's my soul. So, and a lot of people say Indian food is difficult to shoot. I don't understand that. Because for me, Indian food is the simplest thing to shoot, because I love it so much, So if you love it, don't worry about creating, that's too contrived that I need to show something. If you love it, it will show through. I will be speaking about angles next. I think we can go on to the next slide. Okay, angles. Angles is something that I would say should receive importance really last, because we go with light. First, master the light before you start troubling your head with backdrops and angles and whatever else. That's my way of working. You guys could be completely different. I know my learning curve has been slower than I see such brilliant photographs on Instagram. And I think these people have been photographing just for a year. I mean, I must have been really slow. But I would do this last. So choose the simplest angle that you think is simple for you. For me, it was top down, just because I had no space in my house. But if you have a setup in a room where you could do a straight on, like the middle photograph, go for it. If it's the simplest for you. The middle photograph is not 100% 90 degrees, because if you do 100% 90 degrees, you will not be able to look into the bowl. So you have to be careful what your subject is. So if I just go back to this image, this is 100% 90 degrees, because you see that the cake stand, you can barely see over it. And this angle is the best for me for cakes, because I can show the cake in all of its beauty. So I shoot all my cakes, at least a few shots of in this angle, because then you see everything. You see a little bit of the top, you see all of the middle portion, you can see the cake stand, you can also put, your styling. We're not going to be doing styling today because there's no time, but this is the best angle for cakes. So, like I said, top down is simple to do, but it's not simple, not good for cakes, because if you do a cake, unless you have a slice cut out, you only see the top of the cake. You don't see anything else. But it's perfect. A flat lay is just perfect for Indian food, because if you have a lot of dals and sabzis, then you can show that properly from above. Straight on, you just handled it. And the third shot is tilted or 45 degrees, so it's really at an angle. And these can be varying angles, depending again on what you are shooting. So here I wanted to show what's in the bowl. In the middle photograph was not so important because I'm concentrating on my hand. So I already have the, the atta or the flour in my, it's, I'm playing with it. So it was, you already kind of know that there is flour in the bowl. So I don't need to really go into the bowl. However, in the third shot, I need to go into the bowl to show you that what there is in the bowl. So I'm not going to spend too much time on angles because I feel, the other portions are more important. So if you have any questions that I can answer, I see motion shots are definitely, I can talk about that, a few tips. It's important that your setup is well lit for a motion shot, because we haven't talked about exposure, but your speed needs to be very high to be able to get the motion. So think about this. If there is something happening in motion, let's say someone is running, if your speed is too low, you will catch a blur, because the shutter is not closing fast enough. It's not fast enough to capture a moment from the run. But if you do it really fast, then you can see in the honey, I've kind of frozen the honey. My hand is moving it, but because the shutter speed is high, it's frozen my hand and the drip. This is practice. Now, if your setup is not well lit, you cannot go very high on the shutter speed because there's not enough light. So that's why a lot of people use artificial light to do motion shots. But since I refuse to do that, and I only want to use natural light, I have to do this when it's a brighter day, so that I can possibly raise the shutter speed to be able to catch the motion. Shooting food in restaurants is difficult because a lot of restaurants will not have natural light. So what I can suggest is, phone photography actually works really well in restaurants. What you can do is you can carry a small bounce card. So it can, again, but this is, if you're just going there for a meal for fun, that may not be nice if you're carrying something, to bounce the light. But that is something that can help, but if you're doing it for work, if you're doing it for a restaurant for work, then it might be handy to carry a little bit of stuff with you, because the lighting in restaurants mostly is terrible. It's blue light. It's sometimes it's tube lights, and that is not nice for food photography. If they have a window, because a lot of restaurants do, carry the food to where the window is. So, and I know a lot of photographers do that. So yeah, that'll work. But shooting in restaurants is difficult. You may need to carry some equipment for that, just because the lighting situation. And for street photography, that's when you play with your shutter speed and your aperture. So your f-stop and your shutter speed become very important when it's street food photography. So on a cloudy day, you'll have less light. Indeed, you cannot control the light, but there are still shadows because it's still people. And you're not going to be shooting from top down, right? Because it's people, it's street. So your angles are probably going to be more straight on, or at an angle like that. So yeah, experiment. Yeah, for street photography, I would not recommend carrying any real equipment, unless again it's a professional shoot. That is something else. But a lot of the times, street photography, if it's in a shop or halfway in a shop, you will have light and shade. And that is a similar situation as light coming in from the side, or light coming in from the back, or light coming in, hard or soft. But you could have a bounce card, just if you want to lighten up a very dark area. Again, depending on what kind of photography you're trying to achieve. So I think we are all done with the questions. I don't have any here anymore. So phone photography, I think we've covered a little already, some basics. Again, always use natural light so that your pictures are fresh and bright. Don't use flash, because it'll just make everything grayscale. No depth, no dark and light. It's important to have some depth in your images so that they're not flat. I've spoken about this as well. Use the pro shooting mode on the phone if you can, and learn to adjust the exposure. So the pro shooting mode actually on your phone has a lot of options. I'm just going to open up mine right now and just tell you. So on my shooting pro mode, I can also choose my ISO. What is ISO? I will briefly let you know. That's the speed of your film. It's based on when photography was not digital. It was analog. So it depends. It's the sensitivity of the film to light. So if you have a low light condition situation, you can raise your ISO so that the sensor on your camera gets more sensitive to light, which means your images will not be as dark, and you can go slightly higher on your shutter speed. I can also change the focus points. I can change the white balance. I can change it to, the exposure, to whether I want it more darker or to more lighter. So it's great. I mean, I cannot believe that phones can do this. So yeah, we've another very important thing about the phone is use the grid option on the phone, so that so it gives like a grid, and you can choose different kinds of grids, which means that you can kind of, it helps you in positioning and composing your shot, which is fantastic, because otherwise your naked eye is going to do that, right? And someone, I think, asked about hands. Is it so important to use hands in the image? For me, it is, because for me, the whole aspect of Indian food and our mothers and our sisters and all the, these older women who serve food relentlessly day in and day out. For me, that's what my hands do in that image. I am serving the food. So that is my ode to my heritage, that I am basically kind of giving a homage to my mom, who spent her entire life in the kitchen, basically. And I think most of our moms do. So the human element makes it real. It makes the image non-commercial. It makes it more approachable, and you can connect with your audience, because yeah, there's a human element in it. It's not just some random shot of food. So yeah, for me, it's important, not always. Depends on what kind of food I'm serving as well. If I feel it's important, that is personal. Is it personal to you? I also, a lot of people say about my bangles. I do that because, again, I'm Indian. I want to show I'm Indian. That's important to me. So it is what is important to you. It's very important to know. This is a word that is used very often. Be authentic. It's said so much that I think it's lost a bit of its meaning, but it is important to be authentic. Because if you're going to not be authentic, or you're going to do something that you are doing because it's popular, like I've said before, it will show. And it will certainly, and forget about whether it's showing or not, it's not going to make you happy. And it's important that you are happy when shooting. So take the pictures that you like, and don't listen to people who say, oh, but this is not the right composition, or this is not really, the color wheel, and all these words that people throw at you, which I, have also used a little bit, but I find it so fluff. It's all fluff. Just take the pictures. And while you're, experimenting, and you're taking a picture every single day, I recommend taking a picture every single day. Treat it like a job. Just do it every single day. And 99% of the time, it's going to be rubbish. It's fine. And then when you cross that, that kind of hurdle, then suddenly maybe 50% of your pictures will start becoming really good. But you have to go through that phase of your pictures being rubbish before they can be good. And that's important to remember, because it is discouraging when you see online that some people are taking such beautiful photographs and mine are looking so horrible. And what am I doing wrong? You're doing nothing wrong. You're just in a different phase than someone else. Please remember that. And everybody's learning curve is different. So I took 5-7 years to reach where I am today. Maybe you reach it in a few months, and that's okay. Everybody is different. Everybody's different. So please remember that. I hope you have enjoyed this session. We're doing really good for time. I think we have only a minute left. But it was fantastic. I hope I said something useful, and that you enjoyed it a little bit and have learned something. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Rakhee. It was certainly enjoyable, and I think a lot of practical advice on how we can do better with our photography. Thank you to everyone in the audience for being such an engaged lot and sending in all your questions. I hope that you all, as Rakhee said, had some fun and learned a little bit. Rakhee, thanks so much for your time and all your insight. For everyone, I would ask if you could stay another additional few minutes. So we'd just like to show you our latest collaboration with the Maharaja Savai Singh Museum in Jaipur, which is a bit of a journey from phone photography back to vintage photography and looking at some royal portraits from the 19th century.
Welcome to the City Palace, Jaipur. In this edition of Museums Without Borders, I'll share some of the photographic treasures of the Maharaja Savai Man Singh II Museum in conversation with photographs from the MAP collection. We're going to look at 3 pairs of portraits between Jaipur and MAP of 3 19th century rulers from what is now Rajasthan in northwestern India. One set of images is held at MAP and was made by the hugely successful commercial firm of Bourne & Shepherd, which was particularly active in the 1860s and 1870s. The other set is held here at the City Palace, Jaipur, and is unique for having been made by the Maharaja of Jaipur himself, Savai Ram Singh II, probably with the help of assistants. The differences between the MAP and Jaipur collections present the formal versus the more personal side of these 3 people, an intimacy that was made possible because Maharaja Savai Ram Singh knew his sitters personally. We also learn about photographic technology and practice. You'll notice that you can see the jagged edges of the photographic emulsion in the Ram Singh images because we've reproduced them from the negatives without cropping them, whereas the Bourne & Shepherd images are finished photographic prints made to be framed or displayed. The politics and historical context of these rulers' lives are also on display too. For example, in the Bourne & Shepherd portrait, Savai Ram Singh is shown wearing the KSI medal. This was the Knight of the Order of the Star of India, instituted in 1861 in the aftermath of the uprising of 1857, which reminds us of the rapidly changing times in which he lived, in which he had to negotiate Jaipur's place in a new British imperial world. Looking closely at images can reveal many clues about the past, and we discover new stories every time we do. Savai Ram Singh ruled from 1834, the year of his birth, till 1880. We're a little unclear about when he took up photography. There's one suggestion that he met a photographer named T. Murray, probably in Shimla, and that this person later came to Jaipur as the court photographer, and that this is how Savai Ram Singh learnt. There is a possibility that someone else called Eugene Impey was involved, who was the political agent in Jodhpur and a good photographer. Impey nominated the Maharaja to membership of the Bengal Photographic Society. We also know from the travel accounts of an artist and photographer named Louis Rousselet that the Maharaja was a skillful practitioner by 1866 because Rousselet wrote about the long conversation they had on the subject. A guide to Jaipur, published about 10 years later in 1876 and written in English by Thomas Holbein Hendley, also tells us that the Maharaja's photography rooms were above his drawing room, in what is still the private residential area of the palace, which you can see behind me. And this suggests that he liked to have his studio close by for regular access. And finally, we know from his diary, which is also on display in the Painting and Photography Gallery, that he was a regular and knowledgeable photographer. Maharaja Jaswant Singh II of Jodhpur ruled from 1873 to 1895. The Born and Shepherd image shows him standing in full imperious splendor, holding his sword. Savai Ram Singh's version is charming and intimate, showing him with his pet dog at his feet, who obviously had trouble sitting still, which is why that portion of the image is blurred. The informality of this image is almost certainly because Jodhpur and Jaipur were related by marriage. Savai Ram Singh was married to one of Jaswant Singh's sisters. Unfortunately, we don't know her name, as often happens, making it challenging to remember women in history. Jaswant Singh also connects us to the third pair of portraits of Maharana Sajjan Singh of Udaipur. He was the youngest of the three rulers we're discussing today, and sadly had the shortest reign from 1874 to 1884. He too was married to a Jodhpur princess, making the three rulers brothers-in-law. The Born and Shepherd image shows him as a young man, shortly after his accession, posed with the standard studio props. The Savai Ram Singh image of him, on the other hand, shows him much more comfortably and cozily dressed. His velvet robe suggests that it is winter, and in fact that is when this image was made. The Maharana stopped in Jaipur on his way back from the imperial assemblage of 1877 in Delhi, a gathering that Savai Ram Singh, known as the Engineer Prince, also attended and is thought to have arranged the lighting for.
Photographic collections can seem repetitive. What is the difference between one institution's image of Savai Ram Singh II and another's? Their value lies in the details. Who is the sitter, the photographer, the collector? What was the context in which an image was made, and in which it circulated? These are some of the points we compared between the Jaipur and MAP collections. Multiple images of a sitter also function as variations on a theme. Together, they reveal more about an individual than a single image can.